Aesop, the famous fabulist, was born into slavery in 5th century BC Greece. No writings directly attributable to Aesop survive, but he is credited with hundreds of moral tales that have been told and retold countless times in the last 2,000 years. Aesop himself, a mysterious figure, is unlikely to have authored all that is credited to him. The Fables originally served as a moral guide for adults. In his 1693 essay, Some Thoughts Concerning Education, philosopher John Locke suggested Aesop's fables as reading material for young people. His endorsement marks the beginning of the shift that has established the fables in the domain of children's literature. When the child begins to read, Locke writes, some easy, pleasant book suited to his capacity should be put into his hands, wherein the entertainment that he finds might draw him on and reward his pains for reading, and yet not such as should fill his head with perfectly useless trumpery or lay the principles of vice and folly. To this purpose, I think Aesop's fables the best, which, being stories apt to delight and entertain a child, may yet afford useful reflections to a grown man, and if his memory retain them all his life after, he will not repent to find them there among his manly thoughts and serious business. If his Aesop has pictures in it, it will entertain him much the better and encourage him to read, when it carries the increase of knowledge with it. What, after all, is not for children to love in Aesop's tales? They are of manageable length, filled with triumph, peril, and talking beasties. Collected versions of the fables that appear before the 18th century are devoted to the stories and have few or no pictures. The moral attached to the fables in these early collections also tends to appear as a lengthy exhortation called the reflection or application. Editions from the 19th century onward indicate the burgeoning child audience with many pictures and morals condensed into memorable slogans. Individual fables reflect these changes as well, like the famous story of the tortoise and the hare. The two titles, The Tortoise and the Hare, and more commonly in older texts, The Hare and the Tortoise, seem to emphasize, respectively, the virtue of the tortoise or the foolishness of the hare. Listen now to the version from this 1867 collected edition, with illustrations spanning a century. A hare insulted a tortoise upon account of his slowness, and vainly boasted of her own great speed in running. Let us make a match, replied the tortoise. I will run with you 5 miles for 5 pounds, and the fox yonder shall be the umpire of the race. The hare agreed, and away they both started together. But the hare, by reason of her exceeding swiftness, outran the tortoise to such a degree that she made a jest of the matter, and finding herself a little tired, squatted in a tuft of fern that grew by the way and took a nap, thinking that if the tortoise went by, she could at any time fetch him up with all the ease imaginable. In the meantime, the tortoise came jogging on with slow but continued motion, and the hare, out of a too great security and confidence of victory, oversleeping herself, the tortoise arrived at the end of the race first. At the end of the tale, we find the famous moral, slow and steady wins the race, or the race is not always to the swift, or perseverance is surer than swiftness, or persistence beats impulse, or people who are quick are apt to fancy themselves too secure of winning, and thus slower persons outwit them, or do your sleeping at night, not in the middle of the day. In the earliest editions of the Fables, illustrations set to the tortoise and the hare are scarce or non-existent, and the moral is long. Editions containing the fable from the second half of the 19th century use simple black and white illustrations of animals that look like animals in their natural habitat. A notable exception is the beautiful book The Baby's Own Aesop from 1887, whose colored woodcuts represent the very best printing technology offered by the industry of the time. Early 20th century editions transformed the illustrations to colorful anthropomorphic cartoons, corresponding to the rise of animation technology. In the latter half of the 20th century, many publishers singled out The Tortoise and the Hare and expanded it into its very own volume. Today, Aesop's ancient fables occupy a cultural space shared by children and adults. Gregarious animals and colorful illustrations may appear exclusively in children's literature, but the morals and the metaphors cross the age gap, appearing in adults' books with names like Superpower, The Amazing Race Between China's Hare and India's Tortoise, and Hare-Brain Tortoise Mind, Why Intelligence Increases When You Think Less. In fact, the continual republishing of the ancient fables for a young audience is a testament to the appeal they hold for adult storytellers and illustrators. In these treasured children's texts from the Baldwin's Library of Historical Children's Literature, we witness the transformation of the fables through time and experience for ourselves the delight and sobriety of some of the oldest moral tales for adults and children.